We've been looking at factorising using the sum and product or SPF method. Now we know we can only use this method when the quadratics are monic, and that means that the leading coefficient or the number in front of the x squared term is 1, or there's no number written there. Now in the case of our first expression to factorise, it has a -2 coefficient on that x squared term, which means it's not monic. So there's a hint in the question as to what we need to do to make it a monic quadratic, and it says factorise by first taking a common factor. We know we need that number to be a 1. And so generally, when we're factorising to use the sum and product or SPF method, our common factor is going to be whatever number is in front of that x squared at the time, because we need it to be 1. So I can see a -2, and I can see that -2 is actually a factor of all three terms in -2x squared, take 14x, take 20. So we write that -2 common factor. We know that when we expand this back out, we need -2x. So our remaining factor will be x squared. And then we took the minus from the 14x as part of our common factor. And so we have a positive. When we expand that back out, we'll have a minus times a plus, which will give us the negative again, which is what we need. And if we take the 2 as a common factor, we have 7x as the remaining factor. Because when we expand that out, -2 times 7x will give us -14x. And then our final term, once again, that negative became part of the common factor. So we have a positive, because when we expand it out, negative times a positive will give us the minus we need. And then 2 is the common part of the common factor, so our remaining factor is 10. And you can always check that by expanding the brackets to make sure you end up with all negative terms and that we end up with the right terms. Once we've got our common factor, we've taken our common factor, we look at the part of the expression inside the brackets, and that is now monic. There's no number in front of the x squared, which means we can factorise it. So we look for our S for sum, P for product, and then the two factors. The sum, the two numbers that we're looking for, the factors we're looking for, need to sum to 7. They need to have a product of 10, so we multiply them together, we get 10. Numbers that give us a product of 10, the first pair I can think of is 2 and 5. And if we add 2 and 5 together, we do get 7. So that tells me that 2 and 5 is my pair of factors. And so I can factorise this like I normally would as x plus 2, my first bracket, and then x plus 5 in my second bracket. But because we've got that common factor at the front, we need to still include that. So the only thing that changes here, taking that common factor first, is that we'll end up with a common factor at the end. We can look at the second example, -x squared minus 8x minus 16. In this case, there's no number in front of the x squared, so we know that would be a 1, which is what we need, but it's a -1 right now. We need +1. So we want to take that negative as a part of our common factor. So we're going to put the negative, or -1 really, but we don't need to write the 1, negative out the front of the brackets. We'll pop the 1 in there while we're calculating, then remove it later just so we remember what's going on. So a -1 common factor. -1 times what is going to give us -x squared? Well, that's x squared. -1 times what gives us -8x squared? Well, that's going to be +8x. And -1 times +16 gives us -16. And so we can see that by taking that -1, or just the negative as our common factor, we ended up with positive terms inside the brackets. All of the signs switched to positive. And we now have that x squared with no coefficient. It doesn't have the minus in front of it anymore. It's just a 1. And so now it's a monic quadratic, and we can use our factorising. So we do S, the sum we're looking for is 8. The product we're looking for is 16, and we need to find the two factors. We can just ignore that minus out the front of the brackets and look at what's inside and factorise that inside part. So two numbers that multiply to 16, the first pair that I think of is 4 and 4, and 4 plus 4 does equal 8, so that's our pair. We found them straight away. If you don't find them straight away, just keep trying a couple of pairs until you do. And so we factorise that as x plus 4, x plus 4, just like we've been practicing. But now we have that minus in the front. That common factor still needs to remain. So we can see the difference here is take that common factor first so that our quadratics become monic, so there's no number written in front of that x squared, or really it's a 1. And then we can use our regular factorising method.